Okay, fantastic. So yes, so as I was saying, one could go on to atalaprism.io, which is our website. And on the website, you'll be able to click on the Pioneer menu item and scroll down a little bit, and you'll be able to register for the Atala PRISM Pioneer Program. So we're hoping to kick off the next cohort by the end of August, beginning of September. You'll see comms coming through from us. We are revamping the program a little bit because we're adding foundations of SSI so that anyone can come in and read up about what this is, how it works, some of the basics, and then move on to the building with SSI so you can get an understanding of the functionality that's being built on Atala PRISM and how that would work. And then we'd have a user experience module. So it's more like UX design and user experience module that will also be available, because we realize that SSI blockchain solutions in general have their own set of challenges with respect to managing keys and all of these different things. So we are hoping that the UX module will give people the tools to think about user experience in a different way and think about their designs in a different way. So, okay, so if there's no one on the Atala PRISM Pioneer Program at the moment or have any questions on that, then we can swiftly move along. So let me open up this document. Do you want me to project the document onto the screen, or can I? Do you want me to? Okay.
Good. That way we're all in sync.
Okay, let's try that. I have so many things open on my screen. When am I?
While you're doing that, I just wanted to say hi to Simon. You're the CEO of DirectEd, yes?
That's correct.
Yeah, so you've got 3 Roots ID people in here, so we know you well.
Yes.
Yes.
I think
Good to see you.
You've talked more with Rohan, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am now more slow. Well, I'm done with my degree now, so I can finally spend more time on this.
Congrats. Awesome.
Okay. So, so Simon was directed. Okay, I know. I met Rohan as well. Okay,
yes,
now I know where you come from, Simon.
Yes. so Rohan and Cecilia are both doing the PRISM Pioneers.
Okay.
But yeah.
Please let them know about the completion date.
Yeah, that's true. I'll do that.
Thank you. All right, so this is the Cardano SSI Alliance Charter, and I know the first question that seems to be coming up here is, how formalized should this alliance be, and how informal should it be? And I'd like to hear if there are any views on that in particular. Unless people want a little bit more context, which I can provide. You need a little bit more context. So we're saying that the alliance is there to drive adoption of SSI in the Cardano ecosystem by aligning the community on interoperable SSI standards. So currently I'm aware of Atala PRISM as being one of the SSI solutions on the Cardano blockchain. And I'm aware of IMX being around. I'm not sure what other SSI protocols exist on the Cardano blockchain today. But in this room, as we've been discussing self-sovereign identity, the people you see in the room are the regulars. So I'm assuming that all of us will have a good idea as to what's currently existing on the Cardano blockchain. So the thinking is that this working group, alliance, forum, whatever you want to call us at this point in time, is meant to harness the voice of the Cardano SSI community when it comes to creating credential standards for certain verticals or whatever standards. I mean, at the moment, the VNFT, verifiable NFT standard is being discussed, but I also realize it's not just being discussed in the SSI circles, but it's also being discussed in the NFT circles and in the NFT guild and in the, is it the NFT Alliance, the Cardano NFT Alliance or something like that? So there are various communities discussing various things and sometimes discussing the same things. So I think the first thing is, are we aligned in terms of what we're thinking we want this group of people to focus on?
One thing I haven't seen yet, scanning the document, that I would encourage and like to see is adoption such that there's interoperability across blockchain and other implementations of certain pieces in particular. So a DID resolver for the Cardano blockchain is an example, very specific technical deliverable that can be tested, and along with other DID resolvers could encourage interoperability across ecosystems, not just Cardano. So that's a question, I guess, is that in scope? Is that a meaningful, specific deliverable that should be a goal here? I would encourage that discussion.
I think yes, from my point of view. No, because when we say interoperability, it's not only within Cardano. I think within Cardano and the rest of the SSI, or within the SSI world, can be blockchain, other blockchain, or no blockchain at all. So it's, I think, in the general sense.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And and most of the SSI things, if you will, verifiable credentials and so forth, are actually not blockchain specific, or shouldn't be. There's a few things, perhaps how the DID is resolved, and maybe anything specific and metadata specific for Cardano, so forth. But then there's so many things that the DID resolvers, maybe some other DID methods might be blockchain specific. And then what's really exciting, I think, in Hyperledger is, in particular, the region of Aries and DID-COM, allowing peer-to-peer connections that are encrypted, and that's really how verifiable credentials should be used. And so then there's interoperability suites built and tested by the Aries community. So that also I didn't happen to see mentioned. So these are very exciting things that would open up the ecosystem with a lens greater than Cardano, and I think that will really pay dividends over time.
Totally agree. And I think that's, for my point of view, that's one of the main spirits of this alliance. Just to, whatever we build on the Cardano had to be aligned with the rest of the SSI and Aries, Hyperledger, whatever is the open standards, DID-COM, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
I think that the main goal of that is do something that is good for Cardano, but it's being good for Cardano is once you open to the rest of the
and so and stating that explicitly, I would encourage, and then also ultimately participating in their interoperability tests, defining those and there many are defined already, but participating in them once the DID resolver and mediator patterns for communication are if there's something Cardano specific about that, are implemented. This is going to take a time. This is not a quick win.
Yeah, but you mentioned all the projects we are building with Roots ID, with Lance. It's here, and Esteban. So we're building a mediation. We're building integrating Aries on a wallet that is also ACAPI connected to the PRISM. So finding the interoperability on that components frameworks. So we also have a resolver, a universal resolver driver for the DD PRISM. But that is something that we are building alone. So for us, it's good to join everybody in the same path.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree. Just to echo that and, you know, maybe hit it home a little more with what Ed's saying. I mean, we at Roots ID are super impressed with how the Aries ecosystem has their set of RFCs, their AIPs, the Aries interop profile, and then the test harness that you literally can test your integrations against their various frameworks. And then now they're just introducing the ability to, they call it a back channel test to test identity wallets to see how they interop too. So that is, I'm super encouraged by, you know, this idea and adopting those things and bringing those communities together would be like incredibly exciting. But especially in like a real code way, I guess is what I'm saying. The test harness, and you know, there's some school of thought that like before you build any code, you build the test for those code for that code, and initially they all fail, right? It's test-driven development, and then you code to make those tests pass, and then that's how you know what you built is good. And so I would assume the test harness portion of Aries, you know, maybe came after a bunch of their initial development of Indy and things like that. But, you know, we could start literally kind of from a test harness, right? And start building from there. So, you know, we could almost do this as like a test-driven, you know, beginning, which usually ends up much better.
Okay, so so the interoperability across other blockchains, do those discussions already take place somewhere else? So is Hyperledger Aries already having the interoperability discussions across different blockchains, or is it just on Sovereign?
Yeah, that's a perfect question. Again, I'm just super excited about this because I feel like it's so timely. We essentially at Roots ID had that question coming from the Atala PRISM Cardano side, and then, you know, learning a lot about Aries and everything that they're doing. They were very tightly integrated with the Indy ledger previously. And kind of the whole point of starting the Aries project was to say, okay, you know, there's a much bigger SSI world than like a blockchain specific implementation. But even though Aries, you know, let's say got started 2 years ago, it's taken a long time to finally get to the point where they are modularizing their software so that you can exclude the Indy blockchain if you want. I wouldn't say that they're there yet. There's still a lot of dependencies on Indy, but they're essentially breaking those dependencies apart so that it's pluggable. And Aries, I've forgotten which of the 3 Aries meetings that I go to talked about it. I think it was the Aries working group. It might have been the AFJ, actually, the Aries framework JavaScript. They had the Hyperledger Fabric folks. They hosted them, and I guess that's another blockchain implementation essentially. And they basically showed how they implemented the framework without Indy. So we would essentially want to be able to do the same thing with Cardano, right? And show how to connect to Cardano, how to connect to Atala PRISM, all of these kinds of concepts. So I guess it's a very good time for us to be kind of asking that question, and then also, you know, working with the Aries group.
Yeah, initially that, you know, today might mean forking the Hyperledger Aries code or multiple repos that depend on Indy today, you know, building a Cardano adapter or whatever the right, and it's actually like it's a it's a pretty minimal dependency, and it's probably for the resolver or something like that. There's, like I said, there's not much at the Aries level that depends on blockchain, or should. So it might involve forking the code, cross-team collaboration, and then actively participating with those Aries working groups to make it more pluggable or completely separated from a particular blockchain, if that's possible. It's a lot of work, but they're
we already did it with Akapai. So it's
awesome.
Actually it's the resolver plus the signatures. We need to add the ACDSA signatures to the Akapai. But that's it. Once you have you have the minimum code to start working with that.
Yeah, so essentially the spoiler alert is Roots ID is going to essentially do this, right? This is the path that we are going on. So to have a formal group like this is way better, right? Because we want the entire Cardano ecosystem, anything to do with SSI, we want them to all be thinking the same way. Is we need to interop, and we need to interop with more. The wider that we can interop, especially to like the very active Aries industry, then we believe that Cardano is the superior blockchain, right? So when you need a blockchain, a permissionless, public blockchain, we want them to use Cardano essentially, right? So, yeah, it's. I think that just having that confidence, makes it so that we want to interop with as many groups as possible.
Yeah, going back with Anushka question, I think. Yeah, there are other groups, working groups outside us working on that, but at least we need to make sure that whatever decision we take is aligned with that. I think that's maybe the spirit of this align.
Okay, and then so let's say that this working group, this Cardano SSI Alliance, is needed because it helps get everyone building on Cardano aligned to say, guys, we need to make sure that we interoperable with not just blockchain, but maybe even non-blockchain solutions in some way. And we then kind of make sure that we're creating the space for us to talk about these standards, right? So what in my conversation with I want to say Alex or Adrian, I can't remember the person's name. He mentioned that we should have a Discord channel for anyone to come into and learn about SSI. And I put that in the document in different places. And then he suggested we keep the new Slack channel that we created. And then we also make sure we very quickly set up regular meetings to have these conversations about standards and how we want to work and interoperability. And, in speaking to a few people about how the Cardano SSI community already self-organizes and comes together and has these conversations, right? And currently these conversations, I feel we have in this after town hall, in this very room at this point in time, and it's open to anyone that wants to join, right? It's not just open to someone who's building on Cardano. It's not just open to Atala PRISM, it's open to anyone. And then the topics, as you know, the team brings the topic to the session if there's a topic to be discussed. Like next week, we have a topic on educational credentials. So is this forum sufficient because we all are already dedicating our time to have the conversation? Or do we need another forum set up so that we can have those conversations? And we've got the Slack channel set up, but do we need that asynchronous Slack channel set up? Or are there other places for those communications to happen? So I'm just testing here. I'm playing devil's advocate because, when we said, yes, let's create the Cardano SSI Alliance, it sounds like a great idea, right? But I'm just testing and being devil's advocate now to say, is it what the community needs and wants? Yes, Jane.
I'm new here. But I have worked in international technical standards bodies. And in that context, we've found that it is often to have different times for meetings, because it places a great burden on people in Asia to get up in the middle of the night to attend meetings that are good, you know, for people in the United States and Europe. So I don't know about the composition of this community, the overall composition, but you may want to consider that as you're considering this question.
Okay. Thanks, Jane.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna add, guys, that there are like W3C has a task force that is dedicated to SSI and DIDs, and they meet every week on Monday at 8 a.m. I cannot make that meeting, right? But it's essentially they have like a bunch of companies and they do hackathons almost every 3 to 4 months. I don't know how often they do it, but they invite every SSI solution provider project to actually, you know, make their solutions conform the W3C standard, essentially at the schema level, right? And we've done their first PlugFest when Tony posted it in the Astros, and now they're doing PlugFest 2, I believe. So, you know, and whether it's Aries or Prism or whatever you're building on, I think that's kind of like a one standard that we can all agree on, because it's not just, you know, within our own ecosystem, but making sure that we're interoperable with the broader SSI ecosystem, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. And the way I think of this is the majority of SSI is blockchain independent. And so to lead that paragraph to say we're building SSI for Cardano is better to say that we're incorporating these standards or adapting or creating the adapter so that Cardano can work with that community, because it has a lot of maturity, forethought, momentum behind it, and that will, I think, add momentum to Cardano more broadly than trying to say, you know, we're going to lead SSI with Cardano. It's more like we're going to join SSI with Cardano.
Yeah, and I believe the benefit for like a PRISM ecosystem is that, you know, the any projects building on PRISM and that is part of the Cardano SSI Alliance, right, would essentially have access to these you know, standards and know-how pretty much, because like if Tony didn't post about the JFF PlugFest, I wouldn't know, and we wouldn't comply and conform with the W3C open badge. But now, because of that, anybody who builds on the open badge, because the W3C has a much bigger reach than what we have at this moment, and they're actively pushing it, whether it's Aries or any other like DID solution, right? Their users can export their verified credentials and move it into, you know, our solution or the root solution or whoever is building on this. So, and then we can discuss like what is specific to our ecosystem, what is specific to PRISM, because, you know, the value here is not just to build a walled garden, right, but build a garden that supports anybody that wants to come or go, right, and plug into the bigger ecosystem than us. And PRISM would benefit just from being interoperable, being able to adopt new users, freely move, you know, credentials from one ecosystem to another. You know, if somebody does voting on PRISM-based system, right, their reputation and credentials can be then used to vote for another project that's maybe on Aries.
Yeah, I think you're on mute or not.
You have a hardware mute, Anushka.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Oh, you can see how specifically muted I am. I love it. Okay. So
I have 2 buttons too, that's why.
I know you have inside info, it seems. We need SSI to be real quickly. So what I am hearing is that there's already bigger movements out there that are setting standards, and Ed, you're saying instead of saying as Cardano SSI Alliance, we're going to set a standard and then use our voice to influence. We should, and I actually think that this community does look outside and see what standards exist and brings standards into the community as well. I mean, I can see that happening all the time, right? So you very rightly saying that this alliance is about adapting and adopting and possibly adapting standards if needed to ensure interoperability across platforms, be them blockchain or non-blockchain platforms.
Yes.
So we should stand for adopting or adapting, whatever the need may be to ensure full interoperability.
Yes.
And then
yeah,
focus on and then just checking again, then focus on the governance or the tooling or whatever that component might be that's going to get us to full interoperability, which I loosely refer to as standards, like creating standards documents to say that's what that is. But then finding what is the next thing that's not enabling interoperability and then working as a team to go, okay, how do we unlock this piece? And looking everywhere else, trying to leverage what we can so that Cardano can participate in an interoperable landscape. Is that how, am I interpreting this right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, Ed.
yes, exactly. And so my belief, and of course this needs to be tested and verified, is that that the community is ahead. We need to build the adapters, and the tech is and the designs are there. The interoperability is there, and that's really exciting. The hard part about SSI just is actually setting up the trust framework. Is how do we know what issuers to trust? How do the verifiers know what issuers to trust? And who are the verifiers? And so setting up that ecosystem is the harder part actually than the technology in this case.
Ed, that was the same thing when certificate authorities first started to be established. They had to gain enough momentum and trust in the broader community in order to build their business model. So it's been done before. So we need to learn the lessons from that.
Okay. So there's good experience here that we can leverage.
So before I leave, I just had some thoughts. I spoke a bit with Nick from Proof Space, and so this is a bit offering a counter proposition. And his view is essentially that the way you get to standards is by having a lot of people trying different things, and then eventually you kind of reach some idea of how we should define various schemas. I think broadly, so that's kind of what he says. And then his view was that they, and as to say, Proof Space, are happy to comply with any standards as they emerge. So, but they're not really interested in like investing time in it. That's why they're not here. So I think there are these two groups, like at least from my point of view, I could personally help out defining some kind of educational standard or schema and develop that. But I think that I suspect there are a lot of people building who are just happy to come in and kind of learn, okay, this is how you're supposed to do this thing that I'm interested in doing. Thank you for that. So they're more like So this Slack group, say, would be a source of information. Because, for example, I saw that you mentioned that there are multiple projects working on education. I have seen some, but I'm not sure who the other ones are. So having one central point where I know, like, okay, if I want to talk to other people who do education, I go to this Slack channel and I can find other people, and then I can set up a Zoom call. So I think that's a problem that's being solved by the SSI Alliance. You can you know kind of where to go to find other people who think about the same things. And then for the people who, yeah, I mean, it's a source of information as well, as in how should you do things.
Okay. Do
Yeah, I
those
think
channels exist on the current Catalyst Discord or any other channels we have available to us?
not really. Not centralized, it's very decentralized.
There is one, for example, SSI funded proposals from Fund 8. I'm part of that Telegram group, but it's 14 members. And in general, I think it's a bit of an issue in Project Catalyst, for example. There are proposals that come up that are very similar to past proposals, or just like same, because people don't know what has been done before. Now that that's been improved, I think it's easier to look, to search, just very recently, but generally it's kind of hard to know what's going on and finding the right people.
Yeah, the main point, I think, is the Slack channel, the Astros,
Yeah.
that one, right?
Ooh, we can create channels there for all this education and so on, right?
Yeah. I'm joining it now, so I will be able to.
And just
Rodolfo, sorry, cut you off. You were gonna say something.
If I could just jump in real quick, next week, right? I think we're talking about education based credentials in this group, in this meeting, just so everybody knows.
Okay. When is that, next week?
It's this
Wednesday.
same meeting. Yeah, Wednesday next week.
Cool.
Yeah, this breakout room.
Okay, I'll have to write it down. So. I am in Morocco next week, so I don't know about my internet, but I'll try to make it.
Okay, we will be recording the session, so you can also catch up and chat with us. You are in the Astro Slack channel, and I think you're also now in this CSSIA Slack channel, so you can catch us in either of those, and we can chat. Yeah, are there any other strong views that you want to raise around the alliance and the alliance agreement? I think the one viewpoint I'd like is, how formal or informal do you feel this should be personally?
What do you mean by formal and informal? Is Thai using Thai?
So if I think of formal, I'm thinking TOIP, and I'm thinking admin, and I'm thinking governance, and you have people managing things and people managing memberships, and or is it just a place where we really, come world, we here to give you a hug, come talk to us, collaborate with us, and let's get SSI, moving in the world and implemented and usable so that we can live this admin-free lives that I look forward to living one day. So is it as simple as anyone can join this Slack channel, the one that Nin's put up now at 8:45, and we're just happy to collaborate there without too many rules or controls or heavy governance, and without expecting these 5 community managers from this organization has to manage this thing? Is it going to be a community self-organizing, self-run thing, or do we need someone answering questions all the time and getting back to people and making sure that warm body is available to interact all the time?
Well, I don't think we have enough people yet to be too formal, right? And maybe if we get more people joining and working, maybe at that time it's gonna be nice to put more formal and maybe organize ourselves. But at the beginning, I don't see a reason. Maybe it's going to be a burden more than a helpful thing.
Jane, go ahead.
Jane,
So I have, for the last 7 years, been involved in the development of a set of standards that have recently been voted on and are now on a track to be adopted by the International Telecommunications Union, the ITU. And these standards were sort of housed by a standards organization called Oasis Open. And the selection of the group, over time, there were about 300 individuals involved, about 70 organizations around the world. So it was a very robust, very interactive community with a lot of intellectual capabilities and a lot of debate. But because it was such a large organization, we really did need the infrastructure of a standards body that had a devoted staff that could, housed our interactive platform, and they had an onboarding process and all of that. I think given the fact that this is a very young community, that it's better to let it grow organically. Know that as it grows, that there are options out there if you want to formalize it. And there are also models for, I see as I was looking through the draft charter that there's nothing there on intellectual property yet and trademarks and all of that. And so, there are models from these standards organizations that we can use in our sort of organic growth and then formalize it in the future.
Okay.
Back
Thanks,
to-
Jane. Thanks for that input. Thank you. Yes, Nin.
I agree.
Oh, sorry, Ed.
I agree, right? You might want to start with something that's more organic and see who actually contributes, who joins, who participates, and then at some point to formalize the core group and then have community, like I wish I could join all the time, but I know my reality to be part of the community, right? To be participating at some point somehow, right? Maybe part of the working group. But yeah, like I talked to Ben and a bunch of people. We were doing the Cardano Alliance, right? And there was a good feedback shared from the Cardano DeFi Alliance, right? CDA. And it was about at some point you will need to assign specific people to lead specific working groups, because if not, then people don't know what the task is, what needs to be done, if there's any deadline, if at all. So we should all have expectation of formalizing at some point. When that point comes, depends on how fast the SSI Alliance wants to move, right?
I can offer a bit of, like, speaking of this, someone needs to get the responsibility. So I'm from Sweden, and there's a very particular way governance in Sweden is being done generally. So it almost always starts with the government finding someone who's like a commissioner. And so they do research, they have a team, they do all of this, they investigate, and then they come up with a proposal, and then they send it out to all relevant stakeholders for feedback, and then they edit and change it, and then come back with a second iteration, and there's public debate as well. Because I'm afraid that a lot of people will be busy building on their own thing, and they don't have time coming here, but they might be willing to read a, 4, 5, 6, 10-page white paper and give their input. And then this whoever gets the responsibility can then aggregate all of this feedback in some form.
I was just going to say the Linux Foundation has these kinds of processes around IP and working groups and kind of standards for meetings and minutes, or at least the well-run working groups have that. So I think there's a lot of good examples. I'm sure ITU does as well, but with a lot of this being all in the Linux Foundation, it seems like that's the right way to proceed. Sounds like a doubt, maybe.
Okay, I'm gonna head out now. But it's great seeing you.
Thanks, Simon. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks for the
Also,
thanks for your
more
input.
thing.
So yes, Rodolfo, go.
No, just in terms of formalization of maybe if we come up with an idea or something that is, Cardano also have the CIP, Cardano improvement proposals. So we can, maybe as an alliance, can present the proposal there and formalize the idea or whatever we decide on that CIP. So we have another body to formalize maybe our stuff and be more public on the Cardano overall.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Lohan was also saying he saw like 3 SIPs that are trying to do similar things, you know, like a VNFT, but for other types of assets. And so it's really a verifiable thing that people are trying to create here. But there's 3 different SIPs trying to do this in 3 different ways. But maybe we just need, this is how you verify a thing, whatever the thing might be, you know, and be able to move forward with some kind of agreed way in which we'd like to do that. So, okay, so what I'm going to do is I will go through that document again. I will word it such that it is not a very formalized body that we're creating here. It's almost a very informal body that we're creating here, and we'll see how it develops organically. I've already spoken to Trust Over IP, which is part of the Linux Foundation, which you know, has the ecosystem working group. They've got the technical working group, all for self-sovereign identity as well. So I've already found out what those processes would be if we want to become more formalized and be part of that body. So this alliance template, I also kindly borrowed some of the formats and sections from those documents to say, okay, well, if we anyway going to move into that kind of formal structure at some point in the future, then, you know, let's see how we can populate this document as best as possible. But I'll clean it up a bit. We'll keep it slightly looser. And I think we'll just continue to use this after town hall session for any discussions that we want to have for now. Jane, I hear you about the 2 time zones because it's already 9 p.m. here by me. So it's always, you know, having to negotiate family time for this meeting. And it is something we will consider. So the way this Catalyst Swarm has dealt with different time zones is they've got different town halls in different parts of the world. But those different town halls are also in different languages, and I don't think all of them have English in them. So I was like, okay, which ones should I join? And I haven't joined any of the other town halls. So it's definitely something we could consider, but maybe we can start off small in here if there's things we want to discuss and move forward. And you're right, Rodolfo, there is the SIP process to further formalize something that pops out of these conversations that needs to go somewhere. That is also one of the little post-its I put on my page to say, like, what about the SIP process? Like, where does that fit in? So definitely, let's start this as an informal thing and then see how it formalizes and grows. And we know that after town hall is a place where people can come to with whatever brilliant idea that they have, and we can take the conversations from there in whichever direction we need to. Happy days. Cool. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for your time.
Hi.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Slack.
Good to see you guys. Anushka,
too.
always good.
Yes, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.